So what we've created is something we're referring to as the Medical Industry Evaluation Lab. I run a Medical Industry Leadership Institute. People say, medical industry, is that about medical device? Are you teaching physicians? What are you doing? And it's not, why aren't you calling this a healthcare MBA? And I've been rather specific about this, saying without the physician and medicine, this industry, nothing. Now, why would I say that? Well, one, I'm married to a physician, so she's instructed me what to say. So that's worked out pretty well. But the truth is, what defines this industry, and actually what's defined the health reform debate for 100 years, has been physicians. And I would say the one thing that really changed, if I would go back to my PowerPoint presentation when I was in the McCain campaign saying, why do we think it's going to happen this time? The one thing that really changed this time is the AMA laid down. I mean, they were quiet in 92, 93. They went to civil war this time, basically. The specialty societies disassociated themselves with the mainstream primary care docs and academic health centers, which basically is like an adverse selection death spiral. That's what's left in the AMA. And they cut a deal. When 70% of the revenue of the AMA is the licensing rights of the CPT-4 book, something's up. Because it used to be that the revenue was membership fees. Who would have thought? Okay, that means it's not giving value back to the people who were there. What this is getting to the valuation lab is that we need to look at where physicians are involved. That medical school has to be in this. This isn't all about engineering. Okay? And so we have these biomedical programs, but that's maybe not sufficient either, because physicians don't learn about patent law. Right? That's not in their wheelhouse. And physicians don't learn about finance. That's also not in their wheelhouse. Could they? Sure. But they don't. And even the market research stuff gets more into epidemiology. So the thought is, what if you turn this into a course where you had students come along to do these projects, but it's not like the big MBA project where you take all year and you sit down and figure it out. What if you turn it into like the Crucible consulting company experience? The stuff that people who work at Bain and McKinsey go, where it's like they don't sleep. I had one of these students last night I was out to 1 a.m. with, one of my former students. He worked at the advisory board company. He's just boom, boom, boom projects. What if you did that in an MBA environment? Students had to turn these things around in 4 weeks, 3 weeks. They would learn what they're going to need to know as they leave, which is they have to do it just well enough to get to the next level to make basically build or buy decisions or make or go decisions. So when I was developing this idea, and it actually came as a request from people from industry saying, you're going to do this, you know, if you really want to be game changing and do something at a university, something different than Penn or what Northwestern does, you know, this could be helpful for us, that meaning we industry would appreciate you, Minnesota, doing this, given the work that, say, Medtronic did with Earl Bakken, and that you know, basically you have someone from industry and the university coming together. But there's an issue. For many universities, particularly the nonprofits, if you will, or the public universities, there's the land grant mission. And interestingly enough, the land grant mission has been, in my mind, sort of diverted enough to sort of say, you know, profit, evil. Sort of wake you up. And so how would that fit, right? And so I basically said, well, you know, there's a part of me that has an economics, an economic history background, and said, let's go back and look at the Morrill Act, the one that actually I'm amazed at that. How could they pass this during the Civil War? I mean, this is kind of amazing. You know, there's a war going on. But the original Morrill Act basically was that created these land grant institutions to say, we're going to educate citizens more largely for economic development in fields of agriculture, home economics, mechanical arts, and other useful professions. Go off and prosper. It's not, as it's been interpreted by many universities, to be everybody gets a 4-year baccalaureate degree, we'll call you later. Because the idea of a 4-year baccalaureate degree wasn't invented until my alma mater, Johns Hopkins, came up with the notion by basically ripping it off from Germany in the late 19th century. And so what we are trying to do is say, let's revisit that. Let's have the university actually play a very activist role in maybe not creating necessarily the innovation, but at least playing a role in valuing it, because there's so many different disciplines involved to know whether you got winners and losers that make sense, that by the time you get the comparative effectiveness research bar, you actually know you have a winner, as opposed to waiting for it to go flush. So, who are the customers? Any innovator that comes along the way. It could be a surgeon that has a new surgical tool. It could be an engineer with a new polymer. It could be a computer programmer with a different algorithm for clinical decision-making technologies. And the comments coming from industry, Randy Nelson is a micro prototyping person who used to work at Boston Scientific. And he just came in my office one day and he just laid into, he said, there's more intellectual property just on the cutting room floor of these universities, know what to do with. It's disastrous. How much just doesn't go anywhere. Can you help us? So what do? We decided to break down some silos. And so as I started to think about it, I said, well, what a business school largely does well, and I know this from working there now for 10 years, is, we'll do these pro forma statements. We'll do the return on investment. We'll give you 1 year. We'll show you 5 years. We'll show you different scenarios. We'll give you some sort of, return on investment, pre-money launch type of situation, and some marketing pieces. But what if the MBA student knows nothing about engineering? I mean, many of you know, and I've learned this the hard way with medical device, it's not just about, biochemical substances, it's also about the engineering. What if they don't know anything about the engineering? What if they don't know anything about law? So the thought is, what if we created a course that involved 8 colleges, all the academic health center specialties, public health, because basically epidemiology turned a different way as market research with claims data, for example. We involve nursing, we involve pharmacy, we involve medicine, and we involve the law school for intellectual property. That was a fascinating discussion. I don't know if any people have done this. Most people who have programs that are like this never involve the law school. The law school is like on a distant plane, the better silo, if you will. And one of the reasons it's interesting about it is that the law school turns out to be very much like medical school. You can't have the law students practice law without supervision. Supervision from law professors is an expensive proposition. So it's not easy to get into that space, but yet we did it. We actually had a memorandum of agreement from the deans of these 8 colleges. And as I understand at the University of Minnesota, there's never been a memorandum of agreement of anything of the deans of these 8 colleges. It took 5 months to have this thing signed, and we had electronics. But just to get sign-off to move things along. What does it do? It evaluates the technology, and what it does, it's interesting, most student projects are rah-rah projects. We're going to work for the inventor, we're going to support this, we're going to write up the report, there's going to be new information, maybe new data. These students are designed to be sharks because they have 2 clients, the inventors and actually we're saying the investment banking community. Is this going to be something that someone will want to put money in? I've heard side conversations here. What's the device tax going to do? What's this comparative effective stuff? How's this going to screw up our VC markets? That's what this is focused on. It's to take the VC perspective on a technology. And to the point, we've now completed basically now 45 projects as of this week. And that's since 2008 when we started the class. We are literally moving at a clip of doing 30 of these things a year, with about 15 students per cohort. We run through the summer. And of the first 30 that we did, 5 were given the go-ahead, saying, go ahead and develop this thing, license it or sell it. The others were said, some mix of stop, you don't have anything, to go back to the lab, recook this thing. So, and you actually talk to the VC community or angel investors. That's a little more optimistic of ratios, but their ratio is maybe 5%, where our ratio is maybe 15%, but it's certainly different than what you normally would see. What do? Standard product. That's what makes this possible. Everybody has to do the same thing. If comparative effectiveness analysis started working this way, it would make it a lot simpler, right? Everybody has a PowerPoint deck. Everybody has an executive summary. There's a pro forma. There's an IP assessment. There's a regulatory assessment. There's a user evaluation, whether it's the physician or the patient in terms of ease of use. Does this make sense? With some focus group information that's put in. All right? I'm amazed that the students actually respond to this. What's interesting is they make time that they never thought they had because they love doing this stuff. And what's even more surprising is the students that we have coming out, I've had students that I would say, amongst friends, they're above average. They do this. One did it for basically 3 semesters straight. That's the max of what they could do. She was extraordinary. I would never have expected her to walk into Boston Scientific and nail a job like that. All she did is she talked vaguely without mentioning the technologies about what she was doing. And basically the interviewer was kind of like, you do what we want you to do 5 years from now. Come in. This is, of course, a giant sales speech, so I apologize for that.